welcome to your custom deep dive. So you're ready to crack the code on this whole financial success thing, right?
That's what we're here for.
We're diving headfirst into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The goal: to unearth those golden nuggets of wisdom so you can start thinking like the financial rock stars you admire.
It's about more than just thinking differently, though. It's about understanding the rules of the wealth building game and then taking action. And that's what we're going to help you do today.
Music to my ears. Kiyosaki doesn't mess around. Right from the get-go, he's talking about assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
And he says, and this is a direct quote, "Rich people acquire assets. The poor and the middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets."
Okay, seems straightforward enough, but this is huge. What's the big takeaway here for our listeners?
It all boils down to this. Just because you think something's valuable doesn't mean it's going to help you build wealth.
Okay, I like where this is going. An asset, see, that's like that rental property you've been thinking about. Puts money in your pocket while you're catching those Z's even. A liability. That's that shiny new car or even a big house with a hefty mortgage that's constantly draining your bank account every single month.
In Kiyosaki, he's got these brilliant, simple drawings in the book. I mean, seriously, they show you how money flows or doesn't. It's like those diagrams just unlock something in my brain, I'm telling you. But let's talk about the McDonald's case study for a sec. I mean, yeah, we can talk about assets and liabilities in theory all day, but this example, this is where it all clicks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think McDonald's, what comes to mind?
Burgers, fries, shakes.
Right. But Ray Kroc, the mastermind, the guy behind the Golden Arches, he saw something more.
Okay, so spill the beans.
He recognized the power of real estate. That's what he saw.
Okay, this is where it gets juicy. He didn't just want to sling burgers. He wanted to own the land those burgers were sold on.
Precisely. That's how McDonald's became this real estate empire. Kiyosaki, he uses this example to show that sometimes the real gold mine is hidden in plain sight.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners who are like, okay, hold up, that's a cool story, but I'm not exactly opening a fast food joint anytime soon?
It's about shifting your perspective. When you're evaluating a business or even an investment opportunity, don't just see the obvious product or service. Look deeper. Ask yourself, where's the hidden asset? What's everyone else missing? Could be real estate, the brand, even a system or process.
Like having X-ray vision for business. I love it.
Exactly. Train your brain to see the gold mine that others miss.
Now, the book also talks about minding your own business, and it's not just about being an entrepreneur, is it?
You hit the nail on the head. This is about creating multiple streams of income that don't depend on you clocking in and out of a 9-to-5.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Multiple income streams.
Think of it like building multiple pillars to support your financial future, right? Kiyosaki, he's all about building up that asset column. Stocks, bonds, real estate, side hustles, you name it. Anything that puts money in your pocket, even when you're not working. You got it. That's the dream, right? Financial freedom. It starts with having your money work for you, building that army of assets.
Exactly. Not slaving away at a job you hate just to make ends meet.
And remember that story Kiyosaki tells about starting that comic book library with his friend Mike when they were kids?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
That wasn't just some kid's side hustle. That was a crash course in cash flow right there.
Totally. They weren't just making pocket change. They were learning about managing income, expenses, problem solving, marketing. I mean, the list goes on.
Exactly. And that's the kind of real-world education that Kiyosaki's talking about. It's not always about fancy degrees. It's about really understanding how money works.
Speaking of which.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Let's talk about corporations.
Okay, corporations. Not something I usually associate with personal finance, but I'm open to it. Well, Kiyosaki, he makes a pretty bold statement, he says, and I quote, "The rich don't play by the same set of rules."
Ooh, controversial. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to make it clear to our listeners, we're all about ethical and legal wealth building here.
Absolutely. We're not advocating for anything shady.
So when he talks about rules, what's he really getting at?
He's talking about legal structures and, honestly, just being financially savvy. Corporations, they come with certain advantages, especially when it comes to taxes and legal protection that most people don't even know about.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Kiyosaki's point is that these are tools that wealthy people use strategically, but they're accessible to anyone who's willing to learn.
So it's not about being some big-time CEO. It's about understanding how to structure your finances in a way that protects what you earn and helps it grow.
Precisely. It's like, imagine you're playing a game, right?
Right.
You might be a decent player, but if you understand the nuances of the rules, you can really up your game.
And speaking of understanding the rules of the game, you mentioned earlier about Kiyosaki's friend Richard, who missed out on that amazing real estate deal.
Oh, yeah, poor Richard.
That story really highlights how important it is to be careful who you take advice from.
You're telling me Richard's experience is like a cautionary tale, right? It shows how fear and bad advice can completely derail you, even if you have the best intentions.
So ditch the naysayers, got it. But seriously, how do you find those mentors, the people who've been there, done that? And more importantly, how do you get them to spill their secrets?
Well, first of all, you've got to be proactive. Go to seminars, network, put yourself out there. And you know what? Don't be afraid to pay for their expertise.
That's an interesting point. It's almost like instead of looking at it as asking for a favor, you're making an investment.
Exactly. Investing in your financial education is just as important as investing in stocks or real estate, maybe even more so. Because knowledge, that's what empowers you to make smart decisions with your money.
So true. And you know, one thing that really resonated with me in Rich Dad, Poor Dad was Kiyosaki's belief that everyone, even those who seem like they're bad with money, has a financial genius inside them.
Absolutely. It's just about tapping into it.
No more excuses.
Exactly. Kiyosaki says you've got to figure out your why. What's your driving force? What's going to keep you going when things get tough?
It's like having your own personal North Star to guide you through those financial storms.
Right, exactly.
But even with that North Star, sometimes that self-doubt creeps in. How do you quiet that inner critic, that voice that tells you you're not good enough or you'll never figure it out?
That's where surrounding yourself with the right people comes in. Choose your friends, your mentors, wisely. Surround yourself with people who uplift and inspire you. And don't be afraid to learn from their mistakes.
It's like that saying, experience is the best teacher, but sometimes it's cheaper to learn from someone else's mistakes.
Exactly. And here's another key thing I took away from the book. It's not always about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's not enough to just earn a good income. You have to know how to manage it, make it work for you.
Precisely. And that's where so many people get tripped up. They equate a big house or a fancy car with wealth. And don't get me wrong, those things are great, but
there are often liabilities masquerading as assets, right?
You got it. Those mortgage payments, the property taxes, the upkeep, it all adds up. Kiyosaki's philosophy is to focus on building income-producing assets first, things that generate cash flow, and then you can enjoy that dream lifestyle.
It's like flipping the script.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I can't afford that, you're asking, how can I afford that?
You've got it. It's about getting creative, building a solid foundation that supports the life you want to live.
Love it. So it's not about depriving yourself. It's about making smart choices that ultimately give you more freedom and flexibility.
Exactly. And speaking of freedom and flexibility, remember Kiyosaki's take on the traditional play it safe advice?
Oh, yeah. He was not a fan, was he? But isn't playing it safe well?
Safer?
Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he argues that playing it too safe, especially these days, can actually be riskier in the long run. Think about it. Inflation is eating away at your savings.
Okay, that's a scary thought.
It's like your money is slowly disappearing if it's just sitting there. So what's the alternative? Well, it's not about taking reckless risks. It's about calculated risks.
Calculated risk. Okay. I like the sound of that.
Think of it like surfing. You don't just jump on any wave that comes along, right? You study the patterns, you wait for the right opportunity, and then you take action.
Okay, I can see the analogy. You're strategic, discerning, just like a surfer waiting for that perfect wave.
Exactly. And just like surfing, investing has its ups and downs.
For sure.
But instead of panicking when the market takes a dip, you ride those waves, you stay the course, knowing that the right assets, they tend to gain value over time. So much of this circles back to financial literacy, right? And Kiyosaki, he's pretty critical of the traditional education system. He says it doesn't exactly equip people with the financial know-how to really thrive.
Yeah, he makes a valid point. I mean, think about it. We spend all these years learning algebra, history, geography.
All important, of course.
Absolutely essential subjects, for sure.
Yeah.
But how many people graduate knowing how to create a budget or understand how investments work or even just read a credit report?
It's almost like we're thrown out into the world financially unprepared.
That's exactly Kiyosaki's point. He argues that this lack of financial education, it's one of the biggest reasons so many people struggle with money, even those who have great jobs.
Yeah, they might be amazing doctors, lawyers, whatever, but without that basic understanding of how money works.
They're more likely to fall into debt, make bad investment decisions, you name it.
It's like having a high income but no clue how to manage it.
Precisely.
So what's the solution? I mean,
Now,
we can't all go back to school for a finance degree.
true. But what we can do is take control of our own financial education. Read books, attend seminars, find mentors who can guide you.
That's something Kiyosaki talks about a lot, finding those mentors, the people who've already achieved the success you're aiming for. He even goes so far as to say you should be willing to pay them for their time.
Absolutely. Their guidance is invaluable. Think of it as an investment.
Which brings us back to that idea of investing in your financial education.
It's an asset. And here's another gem from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's not just about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep.
So simple, yet so powerful. It's not enough to just earn a good income. You've got to know how to make that money work for you.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of people stumble. They think a big house equals wealth.
It's easy to fall into that trap.
Right. But remember, those mortgage payments, the property taxes, the upkeep.
It adds up.
Kiyosaki's approach is build those income-producing assets first, and then use that cash flow to fund your dream life.
I love that. It's like instead of thinking, I can't afford that, you're saying, how can I afford that?
Exactly. Get creative. Build a foundation that supports the life you want to live.
And that brings us to one of the biggest takeaways from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Taking action.
Absolutely. Knowledge without action is just information. Kiyosaki, he's all about finding a formula that works for you and putting it into practice. He tells that great story about finding that book on tax lien certificates in a bookstore.
Right.
He didn't just read it. He went out and did something with what he learned.
So it's about those aha moments, but then actually putting in the work.
You got it.
This deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad has been incredible. It's really made us rethink our relationship with money and how to take control of our financial futures.
It's a roadmap to building wealth, but it's a journey, not a sprint, right?
So true. There will be bumps in the road, but every step takes you closer to your goals.
Absolutely.
So for everyone listening, here's a final thought to leave you with. What's one small action you can take today to move closer to your financial goals? It doesn't have to be huge.
Maybe it's setting a budget. Maybe it's reading a book about investing, or even just having a conversation about money with your partner.
Every little bit counts. Until next time, everyone, happy investing.